Hey everyone, welcome back to Real Tight TV. And this evening I'm going to be talking about Wahoo fishing. So we're getting up to Wahoo season. Normally starts at around end of October, November, and carries right through until about March. Sometimes even as long as April, depending on how good the fishing is or how many of the fish actually come in. And in Jamaica, there's many different areas that people fish for wahoo, and they fish them differently based on where they're fishing. So on the north coast, like in Montego Bay where I am, we don't have any banks, so to speak. No shallow water areas offshore that we can travel to that would bring, that would hold bait or, be areas where wahoo would congregate. Our main wahoo fishing is done on the edge of the reef. Now, I know in a lot of countries and a lot of places there's a very long shelf and you have to travel, 50, sometimes 100 miles to get to deep enough water to fish for wahoo. But here on the north coast, we have a very sharp drop off, half a mile off of the beach. So we can fish literally right on the edge of that reef and catch wahoo in 180 foot all the way to 500 foot of water, which is generally where we travel, or the areas we like to travel in when the wahoo fishing starts to pick up. So there are some areas on the north coast which is up at Port Antonio, where they have three different banks, or areas just in the middle of the ocean where the water gets really shallow and forms upwelling of current and holds a lot of bait. That would be Henry Holmes, Grappler, and Formigas Bank. Those are the three banks on the north coast, but it's very far for us, so we typically don't travel from Montego Bay to those areas to try and catch those fish. On the south coast there's multiple banks. People will go as far as Pedro Key if they have to, or the banks outside of Pedro Bank, which is normally very good from wahoo fishing, and any kind of pelagic with teeth is usually hanging around those banks. So primarily what we do here in Montego Bay, I do regular trolling. Some persons may do high-speed trolling for wahoo. If you don't have thousands of dollars to burn on gas, trolling at 8 knots is fine. I've caught wahoo at 5 knots, 6 knots. Typically I troll at 8 knots, or 8.5 knots, somewhere around that. And I found that I've been quite successful with it. So it's my style of fishing and what I like to do. One day maybe I might do a high-speed trolling video just for you guys, but more than likely I'll be doing like 8 knots of trolling most of the time. And there's a wide range of lures that I use for wahoo, but I'm gonna actually go through some of what I have, so that you have an idea of what works and what doesn't work, at least here on the north coast. Where you live, the colors might be different on what they might attack or what they prefer, but where I am, I can tell you what has been successful for myself, and even the local fishermen here. Like I said, everybody has their own little style of fishing. I personally had learned this from, one, my own experiments, and two, learning from other persons fishing on charter boats, or with the local fishermen. They do have a wealth of knowledge. Not everybody knows everything, and some persons might be a little blind to new techniques, but everybody has their own little technique that works for them. So I'm gonna go through mine with you right now. Alright guys, so sorry about the lighting. I plan to fix that in upcoming videos. I just don't have the correct lighting to do this properly, but I'm gonna try my best to see how we can get things a little better. I'll try my best to hold them up as close as possible so I can show you what I use. All right, let's start from left to right. So these are bullet heads. I know they're rigged with mono right now, and primarily for Wahoo we use cable or wire. I had rigged these when we were seeing a lot of yellowfin tuna and they weren't biting. See if I could trigger a bite with a different kind of bait. This is actually a Moy's Ono bullet. And surprisingly, with the mono rigged on it, I was trolling it one day and I hooked a Wahoo just, like 15 miles offshore in open water. So I know this thing works for Wahoo. This is, something very typical of, your average trolling guy out there. They'll use these bullet style lures because they stay under the water and they have some action. So this is a Moy's Sniper. It's another one, again, rigged with mono, but coming up to Wahoo season, I'm going to change these over to cable. Very good lures, work very well. So, I mean, it's up to you if you want to go that route in terms of the lures that you purchase to catch Wahoo. We do also have the melt and jets, different jet heads like this that create, a bubble trail, a fantastic bubble trail if you ask me, just below the water surface. Sorry about the condition of these. I just came from fishing not too long ago and the bag was still a little wet. So this is actually supposed to be black and purple. So I have them in a few colors. I have a few more than this, but I just wanted to see how they look. So yeah, melt and cherry jets. I believe these are the mediums, not the larges. The large. The next thing I wanted to show you is this. So this is what our local fisherman would call a bonita feather. Yes, it's not a feather, but the name has stuck with it over the years. This is actually a homemade lure on a piece of lead. Now, every canoe guy, every local fisherman will have about 30 or 40 of these in his arsenal. And, they work on the skipjack tuna. They work on the blackfin tuna. They even work on the yellowfin tuna. But in addition to that, we still catch dolphin on them from time to time, and Wahoo, barracuda, everything bites on these little lures. Even marlin. I've caught blue marlin on this. Not this one specifically, but on this. So it really is just a skirt. And what we do is we tie different rubber skirts underneath it, pieces of rubber skirting to give it all kinds of different colors. Some longer than some, and it gives it, a different action. Now, most of the local fishermen, they'll rig these with wire. I personally, because I usually only use these for tuna or, dolphin in the weed line, I use, 125 to 150 mono as leader on it. I don't really use them on the bank, or, well, not the bank, but on the reef edge for Wahoo, because I have a wide selection of lures most of the time, and I barely take these out unless I think there might be tuna in the area. But fantastic lure, great all-around lure. And the reason why they call it a feather is because traditionally they used to use chicken feathers and tie them onto the lead and troll them for tuna. So that's why I refer to this as a bonita feather. So it's not really a feather, but just so you guys kind of understand the terminology if you didn't know. Well, again, amazing lure. Yes, it does catch Wahoo, and the guys troll on the edge with it with wire, and they catch Wahoo. This is one that I've personally made myself. Everybody has their own little way and style of doing this. This is my style. All right, so we're gonna move on to the Islanders. So I actually have 3 different types of Islanders here. I have the original Islander, which is over here on my right, and I have the Crusader, which is a heavy head with the skirt kind of inverted, turned inside out, so that's why it looks so messy, because it's been in the bag for a while from last Wahoo season. And something similar to a Sea Witch. I have it rigged with cable. I think this is an 8-ounce head. That's how much this head weighs, and it really keeps the bait down. So what I'll do is I use a lot of rigged ballyhoo when it comes to Wahoo, especially since I'm trolling at 8 knots. You know, you're not really gonna tear it off that easily. With a single 9/0, 8 or 9/0 stainless steel hook. And this works pretty good, especially on the choppier days. You want to keep the lure down in the water and you want the bait to have some action. This is a fantastic lure. And the guys on the south coast, they swear by this, especially the local fishermen around there. This is a heavy Islander. So this one, I believe, is about 4 or 6 ounces. I don't remember. But this, I've actually been quite successful with this color, this black and bright orange. I believe it's called E-Red with the flash. The first day I put this lure out with a rigged ballyhoo under it, I got a 50-pound Wahoo on there. It's just, and it's been performing ever since. Anytime the Wahoo are here, I always gonna have this bait out with a rigged ballyhoo under it, no matter what. It just works. There's something about bright orange and Wahoo in the Montego Bay area that just seem to go hand in hand. It's like one of their favorite colors. As you can see over here with the normal Islanders, I have, you know, pink and white, blue and pink. I have a blue and white one as well. I will rig ballyhoo on all of these. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you about the Islanders, they also make this head here. It's called the hula hood. And, you know, I wasn't completely sold on this thing the first time I saw it, but then I decided to give it a try. And you basically rig a ballyhoo under this, and then once you rig him up, you stuff his head in here, and this actually tracks straight. And it's I've been pretty surprised with it. You know, it swims and tracks straight even in rough weather. You know, I was I was pleasantly surprised. And you know, the one thing I can tell you about it is it works. It really works. It's almost like trolling a naked ballyhoo. So yeah, it really does work. Your bait tracks straight. You don't have to worry about doing a chin weight style setup like a lot of you know, other captains and mates do. It's fantastic. I have one that has a little skirt on it here, and they've both worked very well for me. I've caught Wahoo and dolphin on them. Haven't gotten any other strikes from any other fish yet, but I've typically only run them in like weed lines or on the edge of the reef to try and get, you know, Wahoo or dolphin. So maybe if I was trolling them more in free water, I would get more other pelagics, but not a good set of baits to use. I highly recommend these. They have really surprised me in how they work. Then I have aliens. So relatively cheap lure, you know, it's not as expensive as, you know, the Islanders or the Jets or, you know, the Moy's bullet heads, you know, but, you know, simple but effective. Very simple but effective. And, you know, funny enough, I had a friend of mine called me today and said he caught a marlin on this exact same lure, a 200-pound marlin with a rigged ballyhoo under it, which, you know, That says a lot. I have caught marlin on them in the past. This is also a very hot color for me. I'm very lucky with the blue and white. I've caught lots of fish on the pink. As you can tell, this one is missing an eye. But the blue and white and the pink are my two favorites in this alien line of lures. So this is a roughly a 5-inch, 6-inch style lure, maybe a 5-inch. But I also rig ballyhoo under this, and it works very well. You can see this skirt is a bit chopped up from previous strikes and bites and stuff, but yeah, I've even caught yellowfin tuna on this lure. So very good lures. Again, I know looking right here, just showing you the different style of lures. I do have a lot more in different colors, but yeah, I know I can't run them all at once. So there's days that whatever pops into my mind, that's what I take out and rig and run, because everything here has worked and is proven. Now, well, maybe not everything. So now I'm gonna move over to the hard baits. All right. Now, Nomad and Yozuri, I think, are the two top baits in this category. All of these are Nomads, and I'm gonna go through them one by one and kind of let you know. These are Yozuris right here. These three right here. Now, as you can tell, all of the Nomads almost look brand new, but the Yozuris look like they've been through hell and back, which probably can tell you that so far in my experience, the Yozuris have been outfishing the Nomads when it comes to Wahoo. Now, I don't know if that's fair to say yet. I have a friend who has one of these, and he caught 2 Wahoo on it a couple of days ago. So I'm definitely gonna be pushing more to try them and see, if they can match up to, the Yozuris. But what I'll do is I'll put one Yozuri out and I'll put one Nomad out, and we see which one gets a strike first. So let me start with the Mad Scad. Now, I think this is probably the most impressive swimming lure I've ever come across. This thing, it doesn't have a lip. It's shaped a certain way. And I can tell you, this thing right here, I don't know if you can see it or if I got it right, but this thing right here will swim at 20 knots. I have tried it. It works. Now, remember I told you I only throw like 8 knots, but I did a little experiment the other day when I ran down to Negril with the boat, and I put this out, and at 20 knots, it didn't skip, it didn't jump, it just swam like a real fish, or at least like an injured fish. And it looked so good in the water. I can't wait to try this year for Wahoo. I got it a little bit late last season, so I haven't gotten the opportunity to really test these two out, the Mad Scad. But I can't wait to try them. I got this one in this color that kind of looks like a goggle eye. And then, of course, this bright color with the silver stripes, as an option. The one thing that I don't like about Nomads, which is probably one of their selling points, but they use these BKK hooks, and from what you can tell, just from putting them in the water a couple times, they're already starting to break down, they're starting to rust. And I take very good care of my stuff, when it comes to keeping them clean and keeping them in good shape. But I guess they figure if you lose the lure in a fish, it will just rust and come out. But I really hate to see hooks start rusting before you've even caught a fish on it. So that's my big negative thing when it comes to that, to the Nomads, but they do make some beautiful lures, and I have quite a selection of them. All right, so let's start with the DTX 165. So this lure actually, it trolls at 30 feet down, depending on how you run it. Of course, these lures have to be run on the flat line. Unlike the Mad Scad, you can actually run these from the outrigger, which is another fantastic thing, you know. You keep them out of the white water, you keep them, you know, out by themselves. So I'm really excited to try those. So this now is supposed to dive down deep enough when, you know, when we have warmer water temperatures, and see if you can raise up the fish that are a little bit deeper. So this one is the 165. It goes to 30 feet down. Still haven't gotten anything on this yet. All right. The next one is one step up. And again, this pretty color here, I really like it. This is a DTX 200. And this one goes 40 feet. So even deeper than the 165. So you can imagine you're trolling along and this thing is digging down and swimming down at 40 feet under the boat. So you're really fishing different areas of the water column, which, you know, is always a great idea, you know, especially if you're trolling along all day on the surface and not getting anything. I have this one as well, which is a 220. I think this is the biggest one they make. And this one goes to 50 feet. Right. Now, if you notice, I have mono on these, which is usually a bad idea when you're wahoo fishing. But because they have this giant lip, and typically the fish will try to, you know, either go after the head or go after the body. I'm experimenting with 300-pound mono on these lures to see if you know, if maybe I'll get a hookup faster than, you know, than with cable, because cable is quite visible in water. So just wanted to test them out and see how that goes. But again, as you can see here, you know, the rusting from the BKK hooks. Can't say I'm a fan of that. Oh boy. Alright, next one I'm gonna move on to is the Mad Max. Now, in California, on you know, on the Pacific side, there's been a craze over these lures, not for wahoo, but for bluefin tuna. Apparently, they've been running them back, you know, like 200 feet behind the boat, or you know, maybe 100 yards behind the boat, whatever it is, and high-speed trolling through bluefin tuna and getting hookups, you know, almost every single time on these lures. I tried it down here for yellowfin, and they did not bite it, unfortunately. So they have this flat surface here, something very similar to the Yozuri. So the bait kind of swims like this. Doesn't really go deep. This is the Mad Max 240. I actually have two of them, two different colors. It doesn't go down very deep, probably maybe about 5 feet below the surface. But because it's very similar to the Yozuris, I don't see why it won't work. Like I said, I have a friend that just got one of these, and he was using it the other day, like 2 days ago, and he caught 2 wahoo on it, he said. So yeah. Now to the tested and proven. And I'm not gonna start with this one. I'm gonna start with this one, the orange Yozuri Bonito. These have been around for a while. Ow. I gotta re-rig this because it's got a piece of cable sticking out. But anyway, as you can tell, it's had a few strikes. You see his little small teeth marks here. Definitely from a wahoo. Just came across like that. I've caught a few wahoo on this. Not much, but I've also gotten a few strikes that I've missed. What I was saying about the stainless steel hooks, this is a fairly older bait, and these hooks are brand new. Basically the points are still razor sharp, so I don't have any problem with that. Now this is my oldest Yozuri. They don't make this one anymore. See, they used to make it with hooks that rust. So these hooks are rusted, but they're solid as ever. I don't know what they're made from, but they're still solid, and they're still catching fish. This lure has been to hell and back. I've caught a few wahoo over 50 pounds on this. Yozuri doesn't make this color anymore. I wish they did. As you can tell, it's even broken here across the body. It's got so much battle scars, pieces of it missing, but it still works, which is so amazing. It still works. Anyway, I wish I could get this one back. If anybody knows where I can find one, please drop a comment. Let me know. I'll be more than happy to to send the money for it right away. Because, like I said, this is it's an amazing one that they don't make anymore. You can't even tell the difference between the eyes. They used to make them with these little small eyes. Now they make them with these big eyes. This, however, my friends, this color is actually called Wahoo. It's supposed to mimic a smaller Wahoo, because for those of you that didn't know, Wahoo actually eat Wahoo. I've had a few occasions where I have, been reeling in a 30-pound Wahoo, and right beside the boat when you're about to gaff it, another one about 3 times his size will come up and tear the tail off. So they do attack each other. Yes, they are schooling fish, so you will find schools of them, but they do attack each other and eat each other. At first, when I started this out, I was like, all right, maybe it kind of looks like something. And then I was like, they call it a Wahoo, so of course, it's mimicking a Wahoo. It has those beautiful stripes that, they go after. But as you can see as well, this is all Wahoo teeth. I've caught Wahoo in all different sizes on this lure. I mean, look at this. Most certainly don't want to have your finger in the mouth of this fish, as you can tell. Quite chopped up, quite damaged, but still going strong. I actually have another one of these, a brand new one that I haven't used yet. It's fully rigged and everything is in my bag. I have a second one of these oranges as well, but so far they have been out fishing the Nomads. So this season I'm gonna give the Nomads a fair shot. I'm gonna put them out. I'm gonna have one side Nomads, one side Yozuris, just to see what happens and see who gets more strikes. All right. Now I can talk about lures all day long. Everybody has their own their own opinion of which lure is better than what and which one is nicer and who prefers what. I know a canoe guy that he will tell you that the best Wahoo lure is an old style lure called the Betamatic. Now, I can tell you I have absolutely no luck on that lure. I've never caught a Wahoo on it, but this guy will put it out with a rigged ballyhoo and troll it down the edge and come back in with 8-9 Wahoo in his canoe. And I'm like, what the hell? So, as I said, some things will work for you, some things will work for me. Maybe because I'm fishing on a bigger boat, it might work for me a little better. But generally, this is what I use. I think even though you have all of these beautiful baits that work all around, my go-to still is ballyhoo. Rigged ballyhoo on the Islanders, or on the Aliens, whatever it might be. rig ballyhoo is the way to go for me. I prefer that over trolling, regular lures. But especially in the shorter positions, like your flat lines, I'll always have, these Yozuris and Nomads to put out there. Just because, it's kind of in those bubbles closer to the boat. So, the ballyhoo don't necessarily work too great there all the time. So, yeah. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, or you want to share anything that you might do differently that works for you, feel free, leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to reply to you whenever I can. And maybe you can teach me something that I didn't know about. I don't know everything, of course, but I just, like I said, these are my opinions on what has worked for me over the years. So if you want to see more videos like this, just leave me a comment. I'll be more than happy to give more tackle tips on whatever fish there is out there and how we do it. Thanks again everyone. Remember to subscribe.